Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how I managed to automate all my meeting scheduling by building myself a virtual assistant called Adam in Integromat. I'm going to pop the hood and lift the curtain and show you the automations that I use on a daily basis to make my own life easier. My name is Dominik Lehnert, let's get right into it. Why are we doing this? As many of you probably have, as part of your daily working life, is you have to do meetings. You want to do calls, meetings with other people, and it can be kind of a hustle. And I found it myself a bit annoying to always have to schedule them myself. So I do a lot of Zoom calls, and then I have to log into my Zoom account, schedule the meeting, copy the link, send it to the person I'm talking to, or send all the other meeting information to the person, etc., etc. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to find a way how I can automate that without actually having to do any extra work. So I just want to send out the email, and then I want to I found a way with my virtual assistant Adam, I found a way to then just automatically create the Zoom meeting, send out the link to the person that's invited to the Zoom meeting, together with the date, time, etc., etc. So what I did here is I built myself an automation which just reads my emails, then it puts it on my calendar, and then it creates the Zoom meeting and sends all the Zoom information back to the person that I'm having the meeting with, all of that in Integromat. So let's have a look at the tools I used for this. So the toolbox for this has been quite small, I would say. So I used Mailgun to send out emails and get incoming emails. So basically I use this to have Adam, my virtual assistant, to give him an email address. Then I use Zoom for the meetings, obviously. And then I use Integromat as well to actually build the whole automation. And in Integromat, I had to rely a lot on regex. So if you've never worked with regex before, regex is basically a way or a language that you can use to find certain occurrences of words or digits or numbers inside a text. So let's say you have an email and you always, if this email includes the word Adam, in my case, then I always want the word that's right after Adam, and then that you can do in regex quite easily. So then it always checks, is the word Adam somewhere in here, and then always fetch the word that's right after Adam. So that's the toolbox for this, sending the emails, doing the actual meetings, and Integromat. And one thing I want to do with this video is I want to share you the approach that I took to actually build this, so you can learn something for yourself when you have similar projects in the future. And B, I also want to show you the problems I faced and kind of the lessons I learned. So what would I do different next time? Let's have a look at how I approached it. So the approach and the general idea, as I just said, was to have it set up so I just send out an email. Let's say I'm writing an email to Peter anyways, and I want to schedule a meeting, but I don't want to go into my Zoom account and do everything manually, as I said. So the idea was I just add something into the email, like, for example, add Adam, please send ... And then my virtual assistant Adam would realize, oh, this is for me. Okay, now I have to schedule a meeting for this day at this time, in this time zone, send out the link to Peter in that case, and then also CC me on the email so I know it worked. And then I don't have to do anything in terms of the scheduling. So what were kind of the guidelines that I found myself working with from the beginning? So the first thing, as you already noticed, what I already did is you have to define some kind of keywords. So you can't make it that it just has to come up and kind of understand the email, because you can't really make regex or Integromat understand an email, but you can use specific keywords. So what I did in this case is whenever one of my emails includes the words add Adam, please send, then it's going to take that as, okay, this is a to-do for me, I have to create a meeting from this. So the first thing is you have to agree on some kind of keywords that you want to use. It doesn't always have to be the same ones, and you can choose different ones which also just work with the style of emails that you write, but you have to have some kind of defined keywords that you can look for in the email. So that's the first guideline I found myself. Second one is, I think really important, we're going to have a look at this in detail in a moment, is you have to write some test cases. Since written language can vary a lot, you have to find for yourself a few specific test cases of how would you write this, and so that you can use this to then actually build the regexes to match and extract the information from the written text that you need. So this is regex 101, a genius tool in my opinion. I use it almost every day, and this is what I mean by creating the test cases. So as I said, for myself, I decided, okay, my trigger or my keywords are going to be Adam, please send, and then whatever comes afterwards. So I've created, and this is just an example, I've created a few sentences that I would write in an email, and then when I actually put together the regex to extract the date, the time, etc., etc. In my case, also the name of the person I'm sending this to. Then you can verify that it works for all the cases that you have. And the rule is, the better the test cases you came up with, the better your regex is going to be in the end, and the better your automation is going to work. Coming back to the approach, lastly, the last guideline I found myself working with, or something you have to keep in mind, especially if you're doing projects where you're compiling text, is that regex is limited. So in these cases, 99% of the time you're going to use regex, and you have limitations. For example, if you're trying to match different names, there's so many different names in the world basically that it's almost impossible to match all the names. So you have to acknowledge the limitations, and you have to find yourself some sort of structure to work around the limitations. So that is the third thing I started out with. So now let's have a look at the actual automation. And this is what the actual automation looks like. So it's actually a pretty straightforward automation. As you can see, we have two branches. So here in the beginning, we start with a webhook. So this is someone sends, or I send out an email to someone and say, Adam, please send, and then the information for the meeting. And then I would just CC or BCC the email address for my virtual assistant Adam in here, and then it's going to trigger this scenario. So you always want to verify your input. In this case, I'm checking, is the recipient of the email actually Adam, or maybe some mistake happened in my mailgun forwarding to this scenario to trigger the scenario. So I'm first checking, is the actual recipient the email address that I'm expecting it is? And then I have to split it up, because only I want to be able to trigger this automation. I'm checking if the sender is actually me from specific email address or specific email addresses. And then all the parsing begins. So now is the part where the regex starts. And you could have put all these information, all these regex parsings into one module, but I personally prefer it in terms of how clear it is, or how easy it is to understand, and also how easy it is to build and to maintain and fix later. I prefer to actually separate it and do one after the other. So first of all, I'm checking, is Adam's name actually in there? So that does kind of the trigger match. Then I'm passing out the date. So I get the date that is set for the meeting. Then I'm passing out the time that is set for the meeting. And then I'm passing out the name of the recipient for the meeting. And the way I do this is, as I said, I just used regex 101, got my test cases here, and then I just put together these regexes to get out the information. Then one thing I did is that I have set it up so if some of these information, so if some of these regexes don't match, so I don't get all the information I actually need, I've set up a router so I can then send an email. So here I'm basically just checking, am I missing some of the information? So some of these values do not exist. Then please send an error mail to me so I know, okay, it didn't pass correctly, so I have to redo it. Or if all the necessary input is there, please create the Zoom meeting and then send the invite email. So it creates the Zoom meeting for the specific time, date, time zone, etc. And then it sends out an invite email to the person I want to invite to the meeting, to my client. And if the Zoom meeting doesn't work out, or I can't create the Zoom meeting, then it's also going to send an error email to me. And as you can see, just one quick tip, what I like to do is I actually like to just put the error handling straight down. So you can see right away, if you just look at the scenario, at first glance, you can see which is just a different path for the scenario, and you can see which one is actual error handling because it's just straight down. So this is how I built the scenario. So what did I learn from this project? First thing, it revolves around error handling. So I personally like to do error handling where it's needed. It's not necessary to have for every single module to have error handling, but you will see and you will kind of get a feel when you're developing a scenario and when you're testing it and over the first few weeks that it runs, where your breaking points might be. Then there you can implement some error handling, and especially with regexes, and if you're compiling text, especially emails, which can be very different a lot of the times, you have to think about error handling a lot, because you are going to have errors where where you made a mistake in how you wrote the email, or something goes wrong for sure. So you have to think about error handling and what do you want to happen in case of an error. And in my case, I often decide, okay, if an error occurs here, either I just did it plain simply wrong, or I have to amend the regexes so they also catch this case. So I just want an email so I can manually resolve the error. That's the first thing, error handling. The second thing that kind of ties into this is handling missing values, because maybe some part of your regex doesn't match. So maybe you didn't get the name of the person, in my case, that you want to send this invite to. You couldn't compile that out of the email that you received that triggered the automation, but maybe that's not that big of a deal. So you also have to think about, if some of the matchings for regex especially go wrong, maybe you can live with it. Maybe there's a workaround. In my case, I couldn't match the name out of the email itself, but maybe I can fetch it from the header of the email, from the recipient that this email went to. Maybe I can get the information from there. So maybe sometime it's actually not a deal breaker if there's some missing values. So also that's something to think about. What is kind of a deal breaker? Where do I have to stop processing the automation or the scenario, and where can I actually say, hey, there's some workaround, or we simply, it's a nice to have information, but we don't actually, it's not a deal breaker if we don't have it. And the last one is verify your inputs as much as you can, especially if you're working with such a broad input category, like just plain old written text or emails. So try to verify the input as much as possible, especially any assumptions that you make, what has to happen first to trigger the scenario. So in this case, the email has to come from a specific person. So I have to send the email for this automation to trigger. Then is the email actually sent to the right person, or maybe did my email routing do something wrong? So these are a few things that you want to verify. Also, is the keyword actually in the email, or did something go wrong there as well? So try to verify your inputs. So I know these are not the most exciting things, but these are the things that are going to save you a lot of time in A, developing the automation, and B, maintaining the automation, because every time it breaks, you have to go back in, you have to pull up the automation, understand it again, how does it work, what happened, etc., etc. And it just saves you time in the long run. So this is how I have created my virtual assistant Adam. So this is just the very first step in building out Adam further. This is just the first functionality for him, so he can take care of my meetings and send out the Zoom links, etc., etc. And I will keep you updated on this. If you want to know more about automations in Integromat, you can feel free to reach out to me. Also, if you need help with any project or have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, or let me know in the comments if there's any specific topics you would like a video on. I hope this was helpful to anyone. Maybe this gave you some ideas of what is actually possible in Integromat, or you were looking to do a similar project in Integromat yourself. I hope this was helpful. My name is Dominik Lehnert. Take care and goodbye.